Hello, bot fans, and welcome to another edition of Red Square, Blue Square, your go-to for BattleBots recap and reaction. I'm your host, as always, Richard Tiemann, and this is episode number 6, following episode number 7 of BattleBots. We're all caught up. Another fantastic fight card. I really mean that. More knockouts than decisions, I think, ever on a single fight card. But also 2 great guests. We're going to keep the hot streak going. So before we get too far into this episode, we got to have the head referee hit you with a warning. John?
Warning, this episode is full of spoilers. So you've been warned.
Perfect. Okay. You've been warned. If you haven't seen the episode, now's your chance. Go and watch it. This one's worth a few watches, you know, especially go back and like, did that happen? That happened. Yes. We're going to talk about that also. So without further ado, let's introduce you to my special guest in the Red Square. Ooh, it's a little chilly in here, and he's probably your favorite character on Mortal Kombat, but he's the lovable captain of Sub-Zero, Logan Davis. Welcome, Logan. How are you?
Doing great. Get over here or something.
I wish your bot could do that, just like how Duck quacks. You guys definitely need to have a get over here when you guys get activated in the battle bots. And in the blue square, they're kind of a big deal, so much so that they are huge. It is Jonathan Schultz of Huge. Welcome, John. How are you?
Good to be here. Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, before we get into the card, interesting fun fact, a little bit of history for BattleBots. John, your first fight in BattleBots history was actually against Logan's Sub-Zero. I mean, how crazy is that?
I feel like that's like a time gone by at this point. It just, I mean, both robots, they're so different than what they were back then. And they're capable of so much more things than they both were back then. But yes, yeah, that was our first ever fight.
In fact, I was telling Logan before we hit record on this that although the flipper and just overall functionality of Sub-Zero has really come a long way since that fight, the look of Sub-Zero, I mean, was something out of the original Power Rangers, like a Megazord, you know, with those evil eyes and just that chiseled frame. So I don't know if I have to start a petition to bring back that look, but still its same awesome functionality. I'm willing to take that upon myself to do, Logan.
Oh man, you're into it. You're liking the toaster Megazord.
Yes.
I've been trying to get away from that one.
I like the spike mohawk. Put the spike mohawk back on.
Man, you should do that, and the whole team can get faux hawks or something.
There really should be a BattleBots throwback, like, you know, what they do with bounty hunters, but you have these teams, because I'm sure, one, it wouldn't take that much to do, but also a lot of these teams, when they move on to newer models, they keep the originals, you know, the hardcore pieces. See, you've got one right there, and you could have all the throwback designs, some of these original bots that have come a really long way, and have them go at it for a little mini tournament. But we've got
guys would be bored to tears.
Oh my god. I mean, you go back and watch that old Huge as it just crawls around the arena at legitimately like 3 miles an hour. Yeah, no grip until the motors fall off the mounts 30 seconds into each and every fight. And then it just gently creeps around. God, it was the best design, obviously. Everyone said that.
Kick my butt.
Well, you guys, that would be a fun tournament, but we do have another tournament on the horizon, the tournament of 32. Things are really starting to take shape, at least in my opinion, as a fan watching this. You know, I know what my own personal criteria would be as far as not only who gets into the 32, but how the seeding would be. We added a few more to the undefeated 2-0 spot, and that just tells you now that ones were previous undefeated are now no longer. It's starting to get a tighter and tighter window into just who is the top dog this year and who might be right there on the bubble. So let's go ahead and throw up that fight card and take it from the top. First up, fight number 1 was Bloodsport getting a much needed win, knockout over Logan's Sub-Zero. You had some good flips though, Logan. I mean, obviously much better than the previous fight, which was a straight to YouTube one. So congrats for, you know, showing us that, hey, it still works. We just got to work out a few other kinks. So
more armor,
more armor for sure. And maybe a 5th and 6th tire. I don't know, but few things to think about. Fight number 2, Ghost Raptor takes the battle box once again, took on Cobalt and was defeated by a knockout. Big surprise there. Cobalt, that's exactly how we expected Cobalt to go out in that battle box. And once again, Ghost Raptor, a victim of their own kindness and sportsmanship. If they just would just leave it alone, just leave it. Who knows? They could be 2-0 right now, but instead 0-2. Cobalt, though, I mean, wow, that was some phenomenal driving and some grade A destruction. I mean, did that really happen? Absolutely, and I loved every minute of it, as I'm sure a lot of fans watching did as well.
As a note, Cobalt, their first fight in BattleBots was also against Sub-Zero.
Wow, there's a couple. You're the measuring stick, Logan.
Yeah, pretty much. If you can kick my butt, you can move on. Yeah.
Jackpot too. I remember joking with Jeff about it.
That's
their
true.
first fight. You got it. No rookies, only veterans.
No. Oh yeah.
So they are 1-1 now, and one of those bots that I would consider on the bubble, but really could very easily be 2-0. And then fight number 3, Deadlift versus Ice Wave. Ice Wave gets its first win of the season. They are now 1-1 after a very convincing knockout of Deadlift. Then number 4, we've got a flipper on the rise that I'm sure Logan appreciates. That is Blip going 2-0. So they are added to the 2-0 family for this season against Overhaul with a knockout. You don't see many of those with a flipper unless they flip you out of bounds, but this did happen. And Logan, just a real quick thought on Blip. What do you think as a fellow flipper?
Oh, I love it. I love to see another flipper do well. I was not quite sure how it was going to work out with that flipper so far up, but it's been working great. It's been really cool to see. It's really unique, and it looks like it could go pretty far.
We are going to talk a little bit more about Blip here in just a second, but fight number 5, congratulations to John and Huge getting into the win column this season. A big knockout win over Retrograde. I mean, that was a thing of beauty. And John, I got to tell you, we were talking about your first fight, and I remember the love-hate with Huge and how it would go out there and you're just so in awe, but then it would fall apart in the middle or the wheels couldn't catch grip. And now it goes out there and it just decimates an opponent. I mean, it was like, it's come so far for you guys. I mean, the emotion was real, but even watching that episode again, how did you feel about that particular win this season?
Something about the way it's presented on the show or whatever, it really does kind of bring you back to the moment when it happened. I mean, at this point, it was like 6 months ago or something like that when they actually filmed it. But, the emotions come back and that was very real. It's like, especially in the last couple of years, it's just felt like it's one thing after another with things going wrong and being, like they said in the show, a stepping stone win for a lot of other people to go do great things. And it was good to get some of our own, and I feel like kind of make a statement with it.
It was very much a statement when you guys had everything go. I do like the black wheels. I mean, I think the all white look is very clean, but man, there was something about those black wheels. So that was a great look for you guys. And yes, I'm wearing a Team Waiachi shirt. It's only fair because I wore your new Huge shirt that you sent me when I had Jake Ewert on the show.
That's fair.
So we're just trying to keep things fair here. And then number 6, Copperhead advances to 2-0 with a knockout win over Fusion. And this wasn't where Fusion had anything really go wrong with it or catch on fire like we're so used to. This was just, they were outdriven by Copperhead. I mean, that bot was on a mission. So props to Copperhead for getting added to the 2-0 and undefeated family. And then finally, a main event that a lot of us were just really waiting for, and that was Whiplash versus Scorpios, the only decision of the night. And wouldn't you know it, it was a split decision in favor of Whiplash. So they advanced to 2-0, and then Fusion and Scorpios get their first losses of the season. So a couple of bots that probably aren't as on the bubble as you might think, but that 2-0 group, really a set of elite bots. In fact, there are 13 now going down the list. We have Jackpot, Ribot, Uppercut, Tantrum, Sawblaze, Shatter, P1, Reigning Champion, Endgame, Rotator, Hypershock, now Blip, Copperhead, and Whiplash. And a quick shout out to Hypershock and Rusty, the newest addition to Hexbug and their toys that you can purchase. Big dream come true for both of those teams. And I'm excited to see the huge toy and a Sub-Zero toy. You got to get some flipper toys out there, but that's the 2-0 field. And I remember last year, there were certain undefeated bots that did not get top seeding. And I thought that was, even the diehard sports fan that I am, knowing that this is both a, tournament and a competition, but pre-recorded. So there may be some matches that you kind of shift and get where you want them. Still, if you win all the fights put in front of you, because you guys aren't choosing your opponents. I mean, you may call somebody out, but it's ultimately up to the decision makers in production. If you beat every opponent put in front of you, if there are 8 undefeated teams and 8 top seeds, all of those should go to the undefeated teams. But I could be entirely wrong. Jonathan, you've obviously, had your ups and downs, and you've been in the tournaments when the season is going great or not so great. Like, how do you feel about the seeding each year when you're collectively holding your breath as a team, being like, okay, where are we going to be at this time?
I mean, if you look at our track record, our 3 placements in the tournament or matchups were White Forest, Whiplash, and Whiplash. So some days I dread the seeding, because that tends to be where we end up. It's like, all right, what top seed are we gonna fight next? What amazing legendary robot are they gonna put us against? But it is what it is. I would love to actually win our first fight for once and not have to worry about being kind of a little lower in the bracket. But we're there to fight robots. So whoever they put you against is you got a chance to beat them and move on.
Very good take on that. And we look at the fights from this one, and you guys with your win over Retrograde gets you in the win column, and there's not a tie record for any of the bots. It's either a winning record or a losing record. I wonder if there's going to be any bots without a single win this season that could even sniff at a bid in the 32, especially given like what their opponents, the strength of opponent looked like. But, we'll cross that bridge a little later when we get there. But right now, Scorpios, they talked about how, they really need to get a second win to get into the tournament. I think even with just the one win, they could probably see, probably not a higher seed, but a bid at the 32, because their strength of opponent and schedule has been crazy. And Logan, I know that for you guys, obviously Bloodsport and Shatter, very tough opponents. You guys, if you just got one, I would say that would probably, depending on who that was against, would probably be enough. But I mean, how do you feel needing a win to be in the conversation for the tournament?
I think for the tournament, it would have to be a pretty spectacular win. Our Shatter fight, even though it was on YouTube, I enjoyed it. It went the full 3 minutes. And the fight against Bloodsport, we lasted pretty long, but I just don't know that it was really spectacular enough. I think our next fight, our next win would have to be pretty amazing. I think it would be pretty tough for anybody to get in the tournament with 3 losses. That would be a hard sell for me, I think.
It's something I don't envy the committee at all for, because it's not your average regular season. Like, there's just so many variables, the irony of it, in a
Right.
competition that's so many engineers and down to the science. Jonathan, what about you? Do you think that the world of BattleBots, especially with only 3 fights as a sample size, that one solid win is all a bot needs to get into the tournament?
I want to say yes. And I think that there's also a lot that goes into the other factors of, like, you look at Kraken last year, right? They had 1 win, but they had that 1 win over the runner-up, and then they had that razor thin fight with Black Dragon, and I think it's a lot of the more intangible things that are almost missed in the win-loss record that can determine if a 1 and 2 isn't. I mean, we fought 2 jungle gyms for our 2 losses last year, so it was pretty atypical. Which I think was part of our case of, like, okay, you got the strong 3rd win, sure, we'll put you in at the bottom of the bracket, and that's really all we could ask for at that point. Some of it out of your hands. If you end up with a barely working opponent for your 3rd fight after the first 2, then it's probably never going to be spectacular enough to get you in. But that's the game a little bit. You just kind of got to cross your fingers and hope it's that right balance of someone you can play with and then kill.
Now, I don't know much about Retrograde, but I mean, you guys went out there and really put on a huge clinic as far as just everything that is supposed to go right for huge going right. And the formerly known shelf of shame, which, you know, builders and captains and even myself have called it, is no longer a position of shame. It has been claimed by John and Huge as the victory podium. Fantastic work up there. If BattleBots was in the Olympics, that would be their winner's circle podium right there. So clearly gearing up for the future of Olympic sport with what you've used as a place of celebrating glorious victory. So congrats again on the big win over Retrograde. I wanted to talk about flippers here since we have so many good ones. Now, Logan, as I understand it, you guys and Hydra are both hydraulic flippers, which means that you have certain number of flips. No,
actually. So my flipper's pneumatic. It's all high pressure nitrogen. You've got Hydra, which is kind of a mix of hydraulic and air pressure, using kind of this air accumulator. But you know, as far as those two flippers, Hydra can flip indefinitely, but I've got a very small amount of shots I can get with my air tanks. And now Blip is amazing. It can do the same thing with motor. There's no leaky hydraulics to worry about, just several strands of very thin, very impressive string that they're managing to do all that work with.
Well, my question is looking at the different types of flippers that there are. So Hydra can flip indefinitely when it wants to work, and it flips very well. You guys have sort of a set number of flips, and as we saw in this fight, if you miss, like now the countdown is underway. But with Blip, one, I don't think it's all of 250 pounds. I'm not sold that there's 250 pounds of bot in that thing. But however, they flip like they weigh all of 250 pounds. But the interval in which they can flip, like how long do they have to wait before they can flip again with that new style of system?
You know, not long, surprisingly.
Wow.
They've got a lot of horsepower spinning that big flywheel. And their system is so unique that it really only uses the energy it needs to get that flip. And everything else just keeps spinning. So they can get a lot of, you know, really quick flips going. It's a great design.
Well, that answers that, because I'm watching this fight and I'm just like, okay, so they've gotten some great flips, but I mean, they're both driving really well. And if this comes down to, like, if they meet up with a whiplash or a saw blaze, I mean, time is precious. And now you've got to wonder, okay, if they get in position to flip after they've just tried to flip again, are they going to be able to? And that was my big question mark about Blip, because I know that Hydra obviously doesn't have that problem. You guys don't have that problem, but if you miss, you know, your first 4 flips, now you guys might be in trouble as far as how many more you're going to get. What about Lucky? What kind of system is Lucky working with? Because it's working very well.
Oh, it's working great. They're also running air pressure similar to us. And they've got quite a few flips. I think the real downside with a robot like Blip is that flywheel is spinning, and that does impart some gyroscopic forces. So you'll see when Blip turns left, it's able to really stick to the ground, but when it turns right, it lifts up like a spinning robot. Hello, kitty.
But that did let Overhaul get right under it during the fight, and that was the flip they got, was when it gyro danced upwards.
Yeah. So you know, a robot like Sawblaze would really quickly be able to figure out how to capitalize on a situation like that. Just make a NASCAR turn right.
I do think also that if you're fighting a robot like Sawblaze or something, I don't think flips 10 through 20 matter all that much, because if you're taking that long to kill a robot like Sawblaze, you're not going to be in the fight that much longer. I think, you know, I mean, some of Sub-Zero's best wins and some of Lucky's wins this season is just, you get in there, you get 2 or 3 flips, and you get it over with.
Got to control the match from the beginning. with a flipper.
Is that why you guys have stuck with the same system and not changed over to what Jake and Hydra are doing?
Oh, well, what Jake and Hydra are doing is just like black magic voodoo. I'm just squirting some air into a cylinder, you know?
Wow. Obviously, a lot of respect amongst the flipper bots this season. There were some really unique, great designs. I mean, their functionality, though the same, the design is just so different, and that's one of the things that I love about BattleBots so much. And then you have a bot like Huge or like Mammoth, where they go in there and it's just not what you were expecting at all. And I think Bloodsport, a really solid bot, obviously one of those horizontal spinners, might as well be a full body one, but they've mastered the mechanics of what they need to go out there and do pending a really tough opponent. But once you get into the tournament, that's all it really is a bunch of tough opponents. So let's see, sportsmanship got brought up, and I just want to say that I love that Whiplash and Scorpios went out there at the beginning of their fight like that. I think that should be a requirement moving forward, like when fighters touch their gloves, which I'm sure Kenny Florian would love, but also it would create this opportunity for someone, I'm not going to say their name, but it rhymes with snake, could go out there with their flipper bot, and instead of touching, they just flip like they're flipping them off and turn around and go back to the box. So I think that would be one of the aspects of battle bots that I could really get into is having the bots go out and then turn around and go back. But clearly it was something that they must have discussed beforehand. But Jonathan, when you get in there and you're getting set and everything, how much conversation, if any, if you're not, I mean, you're friends with most of the teams, but if you're not like that close of friends, like how much talk is there before the fight once you guys get set up?
It depends on the people. It depends on how you're feeling going in. We didn't talk to Retrograde a whole lot before the fight because they were busy working on it, on the one hand. On the other hand, I was just kind of sitting there in nervous panic because we lost our first fight. And so that puts a damper on the conversation a little bit compared to, if you're winning, you're like, hey, how's it going? Nice to meet you. But when you're 0-1, it's like, I'm just kind of staring at Retrograde of like, how can I kill this thing? How can I kill this thing immediately? And I mean, it worked out, but that's, I say it sometimes, but I never thought that Bill Belichick was actually worried about next week's game until I started doing this. And you're sitting there across from Retrograde, and that's really like all I can think about is focusing on the fight ahead. So yeah, we talk more afterwards, frankly.
So the bots that are on the bubble, at least just from this card. So we have Ice Wave and Cobalt, John, you and Huge. And I think, obviously a 2-1 record, regardless of the opponents or if they were knockouts, unanimous decisions, split decisions. My personal preference for how you put bots into this tournament of 32, not 16, but 32, is that you have strictly by record, because it just feels so tough to argue record against who each bot has fought, because like I said, you guys don't get to choose your opponent, and so you just have to go in there and hope that in 3 minutes you can either knock them out or win the judges over. So let's start with you, Logan. You've been around for a long time with BattleBots, seen your fair share of tournaments. Like, how do you think, especially with the controversy from last year and the seeding and such, are they going to change, or is there still going to be the matchups that they want to see happen early in the tournament, as long as it makes sense, doesn't it?
Going into this season, I thought it being in Vegas was going to have some kind of effect on kind of changing the way they put fights together. But I think this season you're going to see a lot of matches that are handpicked for excitement and energy, and like that ethereal thing that Jonathan was talking about earlier, that thing that you just can't math or science into a bracket.
I think, John, obviously you guys have had to hold your breath and wait, and it's not the most exciting feeling as far as where you're going to be in the tournament, if you're going to be in the tournament, things like that. So, do you have any preferences at this point in your BattleBots career as far as how you would like to see the tournament pan out?
I mean, if I'm king of the world, I would love it if for their, go back to 4 fights, go to 5 fights or something like that. And I really feel like you'd have the granularity to just make these decisions easily. There's no P1 or Hypershock last year if you just make them fight for the 4th fight of the regular season and hash it out from there. But as for the world that we live in, rather than the one that I'm king of, I think that pure record should matter in most cases. But I think that some things like, Mammoth and Tombstone's double knockout, right, should be a little bit more consideration of a tie in that kind of situation. It's, if the whole goal is kill them and they killed each other, then they either both win or they both lose. Something like that. It feels like it kind of, it doesn't give people the credit sometimes. So record plus an asterisk. But if you win your 2 fights, like, yeah, it doesn't matter who you won them over. You win your 2 fights, you probably belong.
And to your point, it is interesting to hear you talk about what's virtually a tie, because one of the things I love the most about BattleBots is that there cannot be any ties. But at the same time, if you're only going to give us 3 fights a regular season, a tie could be huge.
Right. That's the thing is, like, Mammoth lost, but also Mammoth has 3 fights and they knocked out Tombstone. That's pretty good. Like, not a lot of people can say that they did that, and so that's just something I wish occurred more in the seedings than like Mammoth is 1-1. Like, yeah, they're 1-1, but like they knocked out Tombstone.
You guys obviously have your feedback each year that you give them, and so I just hope that each year it pans out the best for you guys. And we're coming up on the home stretch of the regular season, that window of undefeated bots, getting smaller and smaller for who's actually going to make it to the tournament without a single loss. And that'll really get the people talking as far as, who should have been in there that wasn't, which I can't say that there's a lot of bots right now that if they were, on the losing end of things and didn't get in, that I say, well, they deserved it or not. But obviously we want great fights when it's a competition that's pre-recorded. So that's got to be something that lingers in the back of each fighter's mind. Logan, how much, thought goes into the fights that you want, the fights that you get, and just, well, even if we lose, if we can make this a great fight, obviously that can go a long way.
It's one of those things that you end up factoring during the fight. If you're in a situation where you are on your 3rd fight of a season and the fight's going really well, and you've lost your first 2 fights and you're trying to make a real impact on the selection committee, you might try to drag that out a little bit longer, even if it means making a mistake and losing that fight anyway. Sometimes you just have to make the conscious decision to go all in.
What's the risk you take also is you put yourself in that position by losing the first 2, like we did last year. And it's like, all right, we can't just, get a really close judge's decision over Kraken. We need to wreck them. Okay, how do we wreck them? And you're making different decisions in the fight based on, a riskier move, but that might win you the fight slightly harder.
So we talk about if your fight goes a full 3 minutes, one, it's likely to be on the actual fight card because it was a judge's decision, which we're seeing fewer and fewer of. A lot of people like that because not everybody agrees with each judge's decision, but nonetheless, it's great for you guys. It's great for the fans, great for the sponsors. Huge thing if you guys are getting that airtime. But as you get later into the season, you have a bot that is 1-1 or 0-2, and they really need, even if it's a loss, they really need this fight to go the distance for a number of reasons. But at the same time, you, the opponent, is like, well, we really could use a knockout. So how much discussion, sportsmanship, we've seen bots help each other out all the time, but when it comes down to the wire and a bid for the 32 or whatever, I mean, how much mercy is given?
I would say very little. If it's, coming down to the 32, is meaning that I really don't care what the other person wants. We built the robot to chase people down and go on offense rather than be defensive for once. We're going to go on offense. Let's chase down Retrograde. And that was our considerations, really. Just make that impression so we can tell the people doing the 32, forget that first fight, forget the other stuff. We're fit for this.
And then Logan, for you, I mean, you guys might be on the other end of that, sitting at 0-2 right now. You could be in that third fight, and your opponent is 1-1, very much on the bubble. They need it to go 3 minutes, and now they're flipped upside down. What do? You want the win too, but they may have a better chance at the tournament than you do. Is that the kind of camaraderie we see back in the pits?
It's a judgment call that has to be made, in the situation. If they're a really, really nasty spinner, like a huge, you don't want to give them that opportunity to get back into the fight and change the outcome. But if there's somebody you can kind of play with and drag out that fight, it is absolutely worth doing. It's worth keeping that going and not doing the Bronco thing where you just flip them on an edge and go back to your square. You really do, like Jonathan said, you need to send a message.
Now, for the last question, we're starting to see a lot of really good fights, really good bots. There's 13 2-0 bots right now, and that's 3 shy of half your tournament bracket. So if this holds, all these teams end up undefeated. That's a really competitive field so far, especially since the names really shouldn't surprise you. But let's talk about who is the most impressive and why is it Blip, Logan?
Flippers rock. They got to do so much more work. You get 5 points for damage, but 3 points for the other 2 categories. If you're a flipper, you really got to put in the work to go the distance.
There's some people that impressed me that you haven't seen enough of yet for me to talk about. But for other people, I think that Blip is way up there. Lucky is also way up there in the way that they dealt with Orby is such a far cry from, the Lucky that fought Bloodsport a couple years ago or something like that. It's just so much, it seems like it's driving much more confidently. That's the thing. And then I'm excited because they're also my friends. And I'm like, oh my God, Lucky's driving so good. That's amazing. And it just makes a lot of fun to sit in the pits.
You saw Lucky has a new driver. Yeah, not from the combat world, from the RC racing world.
And he's killing it. But even then,
amazing.
They changed their tires over to like the grippier stuff, and it seems to drive well too. But yeah, it's hard to tell driver versus. We've had this discussion before. You could put the best driver in the world with huge in their hands. They're probably not going to look extremely impressive in the process of it, so it really has to go in concert.
So Jonathan, with that statement, you're saying that whoever's driving huge now, if you put any other bot controls in their hands, they're going to be better than the Will Bales or the Matty Vasquez's of the world, just because of
I say if you put huge in Matt Vasquez's hands, you probably wouldn't hear a ton about Matt Vasquez's driving. That's just part of it. It's got its own quirks for sure. It's just as much, Whiplash the robot is so well shaped to control somebody, and Hypershock the robot is so well designed to do donuts around people, and Huge the robot is so well designed to kind of not be able to drive in a straight line and do burnouts all the time. And some of those things look a lot more impressive to an audience than the other things. But with Huge, at least, it's like you get in practice with it, and you get an idea of how to effectively win fights with it. And you see it a lot in different fights.
Did you get a lot of practice with it in the off season? Because you were driving amazingly.
Thank you.
You went in a straight line. You weren't sliding all over the place.
One of the magic things that we learned this year by having a weapon that was large enough and scary enough and functional enough to work is that when the weapon's going full speed, it gyroscopically stabilizes the robot, so it drives in an arrow straight line. So if you see me at the end of the retrograde fight, I turn towards the screws and I floor it, and the blade's not on, and the whole thing just goes and turns, and that's normal. And that's what I've relied on most years is kind of being able to like get around the side of people and that really close in grappling stuff. Driving in a straight line is new.
Sure.
But yeah, I've practiced. We have the littler versions of Huge, and I'm a super big advocate for like build a 30-pound version of your robot, build a 3-pound version, because especially with Huge, if you let off the throttle, the like back end swings over, and there's all sorts of weird things it does that you just kind of have to get practice with.
Sure, I bet it's a weird one.
It's weird. It's fun. I love putting the controls in the hands of people who are used to like a 4-wheel drive box.
Sure.
Because they drive off and then it just keeps rolling and kind of flips over, and you turn the spinner on, and the way it like dances with the blade on, it's hard.
Right.
Well, Logan's cat made a cameo, so Leia had to come in and stop by. Say hi, Leia.
See that.
Oh, my cat's upstairs. She doesn't come in the basement. There's too much metal and sharp down here for her.
Yeah, stuff we got to worry about, right, baby? All right, go play. Well, guys, it's been a lot of fun to break down this fight card, and one more fight for each of you guys. Logan, obviously wishing you the best of luck. It was great to see Sub-Zero get back to its flipping ways again, and we really need Rumbles back, because I want to see a fatal 4-way of flippers. Lucky,
oh my God,
Flip, Hydra, Sub-Zero. Let's go. I mean, come on. I'm really missing Rumbles, and I didn't think I would miss them as much as I am right now.
I would pay good money to see that fight.
Oh, I'd pay good money to have that fight.
Yeah, there's a lot.
You pay good money to be there.
Yeah. That's true.
Jonathan, obviously, best of luck. Your guys' final fight, and a huge congratulations. And keep up the victory dances. Love seeing those. So hopefully there's more wins coming your way. And the shelf of shame is no more. It is now the Jonathan Schultz huge celebration podium. So it's a great rename for that. But we've got plenty more battle bots and more red square, blue square. So don't forget, new episodes are on Discovery every Thursday at 8/7 Central. And give Logan a follow on all of the social medias. Follow Sub-Zero, and Jonathan, follow Team Huge on all the social media. Give us, the F.A.N Show, a like and a subscribe on the YouTube channel, and follow the F.A.N Show Robotics Division on Twitter for all your favorite recap and reaction content not included in RSBS. So for Logan Davis of Sub-Zero, for Jonathan Schultz of Huge, I'm Richard Tiemann. This is Red Square, Blue Square. We'll see you next time.